Hi everyone, in this set of videos we're going to continue on from the color blocking stage and start to refine the background environment image that we're working on. Sean's passed on the artwork to me, and we're going to be taking a look at things like adding in lighting, and I'm going to play around with sort of textures and perhaps some details as well, and also look at setting up the image so that I can modify it reasonably quickly from one lighting style to another lighting style based on potentially something like the time of day. So we can go from a nighttime image to a daytime image by making a few adjustments. So one of the things that I need to be aware of when I'm doing this image is making sure I'm setting up my layers or organizing my layers in a way that I can change the actual time of day in the image pretty quickly and efficiently based on what the art direction is. If the art direction basically decides to change something, in the narrative, for example, from a daytime shot to a nighttime shot or something like that, we can switch the artwork around, the coloring of the artwork around reasonably quickly. So I'm going to be sort of playing around with a whole bunch of different things. So we'll be taking a look at sort of various gradient ramps and color ramps and so on to blend things together, and maybe some texture overlays and things like that. Sean sent me the files that he's been producing, and I'm basically going to take them from where they are and move forward. So he's given me the basic color blocking here. He's also given me an indication of the light source, which we can see. Obviously we've got a daytime scene here at the moment, so I'll probably also do a nighttime version with the moon. So we're going to be sort of refining the light and so on here. I'll probably add some detailing across sort of all the elements of the image. I've got to keep in mind as well the style of the character, which is a vector-based character. So I don't want to necessarily go too crazy with the textures, but we'll have a bit of a play around. And Sean's also given me a version where he's used transparency gradients and color gradients or ramps to blend sections or add transitions of color to help push depth and things like that within the image. So we'll also potentially play around with some of that stuff as well. So largely this is sort of going to be sort of adding some detail and playing around with colors and the positions of highlighting and shadows and so on. So those are the files that I've basically been given. So in essence what we're going to try and do is sort of arrive at sort of maybe a slightly more refined version of what we're seeing on this particular image, with maybe some additional textures and so on added in, and maybe an extra layer of detail. So there's a couple of things I want to start off doing first before I start actually drawing on this image or adding to this image. Sean's got his layers nicely organized, you can see here. The main layers are actually named. So for example, we've got rocks here, for example. All of the clipping mask layers, which are these ones here that are inset, not all of those are named, but I can see which of these goes with which of the main layers, obviously because they're basically clipped in, but the main layers are all named, which is great. What I'm going to do is go through before I start drawing, and I'm actually going to organize these further, which is going to help me down the track if I need to do like a color palette shift to change from, say, daytime to nighttime a little bit more easily. What I'm thinking of doing is using adjustment layers down here with things like a hue saturation change, and what I can do with that is actually clip that onto a group of layers so that the one adjustment will actually change all the layers within the group, rather than having to go through every layer and change every single layer with a hue saturation change, for example. So I'm going to do some further arrangement of these layers before I start. The other thing I'm going to do before I start, and I have started this process already, is I've collected some color reference, which I've just dragged into an additional file here, an additional document. And these are some of the colors that I think I'll probably delve into, in particular for the ground and for the sky. So we have more of obviously an evening shot here up in the top left, sorry, where we've got a much deeper sort of indigo to the sky. So I'll be looking at that potentially for color reference. And also I've got a daytime shot as well, and these are both taken from Australia, the sort of central Australia, where we have this very, very red sand. So I've potentially got several sources for colors for the ground and also for the sky here. Also, I'm taking a look at this this lower image here for lighting reference for the clouds. So also one of the things I want to play around with is potentially playing around with the tree, the actual the details on the tree as well, and probably also on the stone. So I've got some reference here for eucalyptus tree bark. So I might play around with doing sort of a pattern along those lines. And I've also got some reference for some stone or rock. And obviously we've got some sandstone type formations here in this image. But the color palette of that is going to be very similar to the sand. So I wanted to get some additional reference here that I can do. And so what I'm doing essentially is color picking several of these images. I'll do one or two just to show you how I go through that process and how I organize things. And then what I'll do is actually go through, pick all my colors off camera, and then just show you what the resulting palettes are. So what I'm doing essentially is over here in my swatches tab, I'm setting up actual swatch collections specifically for different types of materials. So you can see here I've already done my grey stone colors. So I've got a range of colors here. What I'll do is I'll snap this off and just expand it out a little bit so you can see that a little more clearly. So what I've done essentially for the most part is I try and get a couple of different tones for each category, essentially shadows, highlights, and then sort of base tones or mid tones. So I try and get a couple of samples for each of those. So in this case I've got 2 highlight tones, I've got 2 mid-tones and 2 shadows, and then I've got sort of like an overall sort of super highlight tone that I can pick really kind of bright details out with. So that's sort of like an additional highlight. So basically what I do to do this, I'm going to pick some colors from this stone here. I've got a grey stone, I want a brown stone as well. So I'm just going to zoom in on my image here. So I'm just using the navigator to do that. And I'm just going to pick a few tones from this image. Because I'm doing nothing but color picking, I'm going to switch to the eyedropper tool directly rather than using, say, the brush tool and then holding down Alt. I can just leave it permanently on the eyedropper. I'm going to create a new library first. So down here I'm going to click the new button and I'm going to call this stone brown. Like that. So you can see here it's dropped it underneath the library that was selected. Okay, so now if I select a color, and I like to start with the highlights, so I'm looking for the brightest part of this rock, which is just here. So I'm going to pick that color, make sure that my brownstone library is selected, and then I'm going to click the new button for a new swatch. And I'm going to call this high for highlight, and then 1, and then hit OK. And that's going to add that in there. Then I'm going to just keep repeating that process. So I'm going to grab sort of the next darkest area from what I've got selected. So it's going to be probably one of these tones just here, something like that. So all I do is go through and add in as many different colors as I want, and basically that's my palette's ready to go.